riders for the pleasures of Tijuana might very well be in the crowd here today at Carlsbad Raceway. The 500cc pros are at the gate.
Some of the big names in the sport, those in the fight for the championship here. 66, Scott Brown, number 28, Greg Zitterkoff. The 29 machine, that's Brian Manley, Derek Brown on 425, and Tim McClintock on 78. Numbers and names to watch throughout this run. Now, all eyes on the gate. The gate drops, and the riders head for the first turn as they begin to narrow down these 500cc bikes.
The starter just barely getting out of the way of the thundering herd as they enter the left-hander turn number... Oh, and we've got some riders down right in the middle of the pack, the worst place you can fall.
The 38 machine, that's Mike Healy. He gets it up. Greg Zitterkoff, that's the 28 machine, but one rider struggling to his feet. That looks to be Hicks, and he's got some problems. On the course, the rest of the field continuing on with Scott Brown on number 66 in the lead, followed by Derek Brown. But back at the start, Jeff Hicks definitely is hurt. Now some assistance coming over to him, and they'll give him what help they can, but it looks like Hicks is out on the very first turn. The fight for the lead here. Brown and Brown out in front is the 66 bike of Scott Brown being chased by Derek. The 54 machine is Corey Schweitzer as he is chasing the leaders.
And for the sixth position, number 78, Tim McClintock. That's the red Honda, and he is getting an awful lot of pressure from number 1, Sean Conley on the Kawasaki.
A three-way battle for sixth place as they work their way around the circuit. Now coming down the hill. And look at Sean throw that number 1 machine around. And now that battle begins to string out just a bit. The battle for sixth place. And Mike Brown on number 101, currently running 8th. Almost drops the bike as he comes through that corner.
And Paul, even visually, we can see how much more difficult these 500 machines are to ride. A lot more weight, a lot more power, and something else you have to deal with, what the riders call the roost. They have so much power, they're continually turning that rear wheel. There's a rooster tail of dirt and stones that can be very painful if you get behind a couple of them.
We look now back up to the front of the field. There's the 66 machine belonging to Scott Brown. He is being chased now by Derek Brown, but closing in third is the 29 machine of Brian Manley. Manley running in third. The Kawasaki's running first and second. Now, here comes Derek Brown up to challenge for the lead. Manley closing in from third place. The fight is at the front of the field. Derek Brown trying to catch Scott Brown, who is currently the leader on number 66. You get a good look at young Derek Brown there. Challenging for the lead, trying to take it away from number 66. That's Scott Brown.
Kawasaki right now enjoying 1, 2, 3. But that is no doubt due to Jeff Hicks for Honda falling in that opening lap. Also, Mike Healy on the KTM went down, and Zitterkoff on the ATK. So 3 of the prime challengers, the Team Green, are back in the pack-aways trying to move up.
And Brian Manley comes up to challenge for second place. He gets alongside the outside of Derek Brown, gets pushed high. Now he begins to accelerate. It's Derek Brown and Manley moves past and picks up second. Now he is chasing Scott Brown for the lead.
And even though he went down, Mike Healy rebounded that KTM, and here we see marching through the field. He just took Mike Hooker, number 19, for the 9th spot and is closing on 101 Mike Brown, who bobbled earlier.
So Mike Healy trying to make up the distance. He dropped the bike and was actually out of the event for 15, 20 seconds. That pushed him way back in the field at the start of this run. Now he has to use whatever skill and power he has to work his way back up through the field. We're at the front of the field once again. The 66 machine of Scott Brown now being chased by Manley. Derek Brown rides back in third as Manley closes in on Brown. Both Kawasaki's being thrown all over this course. And as Steve mentioned, Kawasaki running 1, 2, and 3 at the moment as Manley pulls up alongside for just a second. Brown tries to hold him off. Scott Brown is the leader on 66, but Brian Manley closes once again. Now Manley drops back, trying to feel out Brown for the lead, try to find where he does, in fact, place that machine.
And let's remember that the man on the move, number 38, Mike Healy, is on a 350cc machine. He has gotten around number 1, Sean Conley, for 7th, and Tim McClintock, number 78, for the 6th position. Wow, Healy is really cooking.
You know, that demonstrates an interesting attitude in riding, that the rider, in this case Mike Healy, is so good and understands the power of the machine so well that he decides the 350cc bike is one that is more efficient for him. He's currently running 6th after dropping the bike on the first corner. And that power, 350 cc's, in a race designed for 500s, really is working well here at Carlsbad.
Well, a surplus of power on a dry racetrack can be a big disadvantage. And here we've got some combat for the lead, and smoking by Scott Brown is number 29, Brian Manley.
Brian Manley has been parading his way up through this field, working his way up, now picking up the front position, but it is still a Kawasaki battle, as Brian Manley, who was actually off of the first corner riding about 7, was able to work his way up past all of those bikes in front of him, finally getting Scott Brown and picking up the lead. But Scott Brown would love to get it back as he now tries to challenge Manley down on the inside, but for the time being can only settle for second place.
Checking with the CMC officials, we find out that Jeff Hicks, who is currently walking in fistula pain back to his pit, has cut a few fingers. He's going to require some medical attention, but he'll be right back on the motorcycle in the weeks to come.
So the action continues in the 500cc
with the Honda and the KTM going at it this time for the 5th position. Number 54C, Corey Schweitzer, and 38, Mike Healy on that KTM, who after his fall has moved up a number of positions. A terrific effort.
But you know, Steve, as we were looking at that leaderboard, Manley, Scott Brown, Derek Brown, all on Kawasaki's, then followed by 2 Hondas, Ron Turner and Corey Schweitzer. Mike Healy tries to work his way up through the field. He was well out of the top 10, is currently running in 6th place.
Well, the start at motocross can be everything. If you get a bad start, you've just got to work doubly hard, and that's what some of these riders are doing, including, and look at Healy here, number 38 on the KTM. He has taken 5th, and closing on Ron Turner, the Honda, for the 4th position.
So Mike Healy charges his way up through the field, showing some of the skill. Really, in racing, you tend to seek your own level. So now he tries to close down on the 1X Honda. That belongs to Ron Turner. And Healy is right at the back end and charging up.
Well, you can see here why, when Healy became a free agent from Tajita, the Austrians at KTM were so anxious to sign the young man from nearby Costa Mesa, California. Had he not been involved in that little shot, he might be right up front.
Well, the challenge that Healy has is both fun and frustrating. Fun in that as you're charging your way up through the field, you get to pass a lot of people. But frustrating because you know as he gets around the number 1 machine of Ron Turner, you know that you really could have been up at the front if only for one mistake. And you're wondering, how far away is the front of the field moving from me as I'm having to fight with all these other machines?
Hey, Healy not the only rider that has recovered well from that opening crash. Greg Zitterkoff, number 28, has now moved up into the 6th position.
Well, Zitterkoff kind of used Healy as a point man, watching him as he moved his way through the field. You know, the tires they ride on are so important. Earlier, Steve Biles has now moved up to 2nd place, and a fight has developed for 3rd between 66 Scott Brown, 1X Ron Turner, and 425 Derek Brown. Now remember, the Browns were both the early leaders in this race, and then finally Manley got past. Now Healy goes into 2nd place, and this fight developed for 3rd. The 66 machine, that's Scott Brown. Ron Turner comes down on the Honda right behind him. And look at there. Mike Healy has pulled to a stop. I don't know what's wrong, but it's not running now.
And to compound the problem, it's happened on the very last lap with Healy on the move. So he's going to push that bike off. No, he's going to try to restart it. And even with that strong right leg, you can see all the compression in that 350cc KTM. So number 38, Mike Healy, he is done in the first moto.
Well, when he drops out, that gives a definite advantage to those who are battling for 3rd. Here is Brian Manley. He's the leader and unchallenged at the moment. The fight now is for 2nd place. Scott Brown on 66 is currently 2nd, followed by Derek Brown. Manley all alone. Look at the tremendous lead that he has. He enjoys this lead and the checkered flag and the win. Totally unchallenged. So Brian Manley on his Kawasaki wins it. The fight continues for 2nd.
And that is number 66, Scott Brown, number 425, Derek Brown, both on their Kawasaki. Behind them, the distinctive sound of the 4-stroke machine, the Honda of Ron Turner 1X.
And 66, Scott Brown charges for the line now and finishes in 2nd. Derek Brown comes across in 3rd, and Ron Turner finishes in 4th. So the results are now final and official. Manley, followed by Scott Brown, then Derek, then Ron Turner, and Greg Zitterkoff with a nice ride after that first lap accident. And as a result of this finish, here are the points.